Now we're going to talk about one of those groups, the groups of genes related to weight loss in a little bit greater detail. This is one of my favorite subjects just because I struggled with my own weight my entire life. So I've definitely always wondered or picked apart this process of what causes people to be overweight. And again, I would say the biggest thing that I came home with is that everybody's different. Everybody has their own risk factors. So my learning objectives for this talk are going to be to increase your knowledge and understanding of the well-researched alleles that are associated with weight management or difficulties maintaining your weight. We're going to talk about the interactions. So if you have more than one of these risk alleles, what does that mean for you as a patient? We're going to identify symptoms that would make you want to treat this patient. And we're going to talk about treatment plans and treatment considerations here, just to kind of, again, get that ball rolling of what to do. Genetic information is so useful, but really what the practitioners want to know is how do I help my patient? So, I love this quote. I'm one of those people you hate because of genetics. It's the truth. Brad Pitt. I remember I was looking for pictures to put on this quote, and so on my screen it was just tons of pictures of Brad Pitt, and I was like, I hope Dr. Kashi doesn't walk by right now and think, what am I doing with my time here? But it's true. There are just, it's you can look at somebody who's really thin, and they'll oh, I eat tons, right? Have you ever met that person? And then you're just like, So what is it? It's a $1 billion question, because weight management, we spend as a nation billions of dollars. That's why we changed this from the $1 million question to the $1 billion question. It's a huge industry because a lot of people struggle with it. And again, it's all genetics, it's not all environment. We do have our environmental issues, we have our eating habits, our sedentary lifestyles, and then we have our genetics and we have our epigenetics. And those are all things that are going to play. So obesity rates in 2016, and you can kind of see here is the severity with the colors and such. And you can see there are some, clusters of states that are just clustered together that maybe struggle more with their weight. And you can come up and see. Sometimes you think, it must be, we live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, so we hike more. But, there's other factors at play, too. So there's no one magic bullet, no right diet. And I know that I'm probably speaking to the choir here, but all the fad diets, this is another thing that would just blow my mind when I first got into weight loss, because I would, prescribe a diet for one patient, and they would lose tons of weight and loved it, and they found it super easy to follow. And then another person would be like, I gained weight on that. I gained weight on that diet. I remember I tried the Atkins diet once, and I gained weight on it. I was like, how is this humanly possible? Again, I was doing it combined with a friend who was dropping pounds, and they were like, well, maybe you're not following it right. I'm like, I know how to count. I can count carbs, you guys. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. Yeah, so that was at the time. So what I found is that there are a lot of fad diets out there. Some work for some people, some work for others. And again, that's about figuring out, these are great questions to ask your patient that comes in for weight loss. You'd be like, what diets have you done and what has worked? Even if they haven't been able to stick with it. So, factors affecting weight. So what are these factors at play? You can have they're just resting metabolic rates. Some people have a higher metabolic rate. I met a gentleman who said that he was rail thin, and he would eat constantly all day long because he just wanted to weigh a little bit more, and he couldn't do it. He had his thyroid levels checked, they were totally normal. He just couldn't do it. He couldn't put on more weight. I know. Yeah. He wanted to weigh, he wanted to weigh just a little bit more. I'm so not used to not being able to fiddle with my shirt. Perceived hunger. This is a big one. How hungry is the person? If they're never hungry, like my 4-year-old, they're never going to eat and they're never going to weigh anything. Ability to regulate how much food is consumed. When you get started, like for me, when I get started eating, it's like I'm committed to finishing my plate. This is going to happen. My best friend, when I was growing up, she would always leave a little bit of food on her plate, and I would want to eat it for her. Not because I was hungry, just because it had to be done. These are all these factors that come into play. Hormonal regulation. Hormones, no surprise, they have a huge effect on your weight. Not just thyroid, leptin, progesterone, these things. These are all going to factor in. Cortisol. Cortisol is a really interesting one. If you look at Cushing's disease and these are shown with weight. One of the symptoms is weight gain. And then genetic susceptibility, which kind of is an underlying current with all these symptoms. So the right diet for you, for your DNA genotype. So understanding that the patient's DNA individualizes them. And it's not about helping them lose weight. It's also about helping them sustain that weight loss. And that's why you need to pick a diet or a lifestyle recommendation that they can do for life. So it's not just a diet. Because honestly, I think it's harder to maintain weight loss than it is to lose weight. I don't know if anybody feels that way too, but in my personal experience, that has been the bigger struggle. And then this graph, which you have already seen before, but I love to, it looks like a big, beautiful flower to me, but the significance of this is that researchers, when they developed this graph, what they did was they actually took different factors that were evolved in weight loss, like your BMI and then your waist circumference, just overall obesity rate, your body percent fat, because sometimes, as we all know, BMI can have nothing to do with body percent fat. You can have a ton of muscle mass and have a high BMI and a low percent body fat. So what they did was they took all of these symptoms and then they looked at all the genes involved in weight regulation, and they lumped them together based on the symptoms or what the research studies were finding the symptoms to be. And in the middle of it, you see some core genes that are affecting multiple different measurements of obesity. You have FTO and MC4R are some of the most well-researched in relationship to obesity. And then you have some other ones down here that we're going to talk about too, SH2B1. So when we were doing our review of the research on the different genes, some of the ones that were best researched and had those meta-analyses that Dr. Knapp was talking about were the FTO, DRD2 in relationship or combined with FTO, MC4R, FABB2, ADRB2, and SH2B1. And they, again, have some overlapping themes here. A lot of them have to do with appetite regulation. Here. Other ones have to do with your ability to use and absorb fat. So they're unique. And what's nice, too, is because you can take this genetic information. This is really the point of the entire talk, is you can take this genetic information and be able to help your patient tailor their diet, their eating for this. So an example is I had a patient who was saying, oh, I'm on the ketogenic diet. And they had 2 copies of the FABP2. And I was like, maybe not for you. Are you losing weight on that? No. Well, that's probably why. You want to focus on high fiber, high proteins. These are the things that are going to make you feel full and aren't going to give you unnecessarily high amounts of calories. So weight management. These are the likely symptoms, again, that resistance to weight loss. Or when you're overweight despite lifestyle. Poor results from diet. These are the patients that are always hungry, eat too much, persistently gain weight despite trying not to. And then just some of the patients that have an elevated BMI. Anything over 25 is overweight. 30 is obese. Weight gain in the stomach, hips, and thighs can sometimes be related to certain genes or risk alleles. So I remember when I was preparing this lecture, Kate was like, oh, this is right before lunch. I don't know if we should have so many pictures of all-you-can-eat buffets. But I was like, I think they can handle it. So she was like, okay, we'll have food out there in case they can't make it through this talk. But the FTO gene. This is somebody who says, I've been fasting since breakfast. I like the second breakfast, you know, when I was watching the Lord of the Rings and the hobbits had the second breakfast, that's when I decided I was a hobbit. Because I absolutely am all about second breakfast. And I also have one of the FTO wrist alleles, so there you go. It was, except for the hairy feet, yes. This was first discovered in 2007, and it is one of the strongest genetic factors, risk factors for obesity. These are the risk alleles, and you can see this too in any test result. They're going to report the risk alleles. When you see these AAs, this is talking about the base pairs. That's the genotype. And they're looking at what the base is at a specific spot in the gene, what base pair is there. So the results from these studies found that people with this risk allele craved high-calorie foods. They had reduced feelings of fullness after a meal. They didn't feel full as quickly, which made them want to eat more, which, no surprise, was going to increase their BMI. And they had a 1.7-fold increased risk for developing obesity. So what to do? What to recommend? These are the patients, it's all about appetite control. So whatever protocol you have for appetite regulation, or if you're looking for ones, you can always recommend, if this patient can do this, like small meals throughout the day so that they're always feeling full and have them be high in fiber. I love making the recommendation, if you ever take a fiber supplement, of having the patient take it about 10 minutes before a meal. It'll go into their stomach, it'll expand, and it'll start that process, it'll start that signal going to your brain, telling you, hey, you know what, you need to slow down. And then when you actually put the meal on top of it, they'll feel full faster, or at a normal rate, as somebody, the wild type, or the type that doesn't have this risk allele. Also, there's also a lot of supplements out there for appetite regulation. I know a lot of people use things like cinnamon or other supplements too that can help people to just kind of decrease that craving, that constant craving. But you also want to make sure they're not eating high-calorie foods, because high-calorie foods can actually make the situation worse. It can make it so that they are less responsive to the signals of feeling full. It's like a vicious cycle. So that's where I was saying that patient was compensating. When she was already eating high-protein, high-fiber foods, she was already compensating for her FTOG. MC4R and metabolism. I know it's my third plate, but I still feel hungry. There's that overlap. There's a lot of craving for food, a lot of overeating with this risk allele. They don't feel full. And then to compact and to make the situation worse, they're not breaking down their sugars and utilizing them as quickly and as easily. And they are starting to become, so they have metabolism regulation issues. This is a great gene because this one is also, through meta-analysis studies, been linked to an increased risk for type 2 diabetes. So you can see that pattern developing. You can see that drive for hunger to increase your weight, and then also increase your chances of type 2 diabetes because you're not stabilizing your blood sugars levels. You're more prone to insulin resistance. What to do with this patient? I would treat them a lot the same way as the FTO in some respects, where you're really working on their ability to control their hunger and to not consume high-calorie foods, especially not high-sugary foods. And then I would take it one step further. I would really, really make sure I had a good type 2 diabetes preventative strategy in place. You want to increase their utilization of insulin, chromium, cinnamon. These are the supplements that will help decrease insulin resistance. And you want to make sure that they're not eating a lot of sugar. You want to make sure that their blood sugars are constantly regulated. And you want to prescribe exercise that's good for somebody who has a predisposition for type 2 diabetes. So it can be fluctuating high intensity with regular, steady exercise, kind of going back and forth. FABP2 and fat absorption. These are the ones that absorb long-chain saturated and unsaturated fatty acids more easily. What does that mean? That means the fats that have the long-chain fatty acids in them are going to be higher calorie for this person. Whereas if you think about like coconut oil, where it has the medium chain and short chain fatty acids, that's going to be normal. They're going to absorb those at a normal rate. So these are just these little tweaks that you could make in somebody's lifestyle that would be a huge difference for them. Like the ketogenic diet is a lot of meat and dairy. You might recommend that they stick to a more like nut, coconut nut or coconut oil sort of fats to help them out. So you have also an increased risk for higher fasting glucose level with these because of lipid oxidation. So they have a lot of fats. The fats are become oxidized, and that can actually create problems with insulin resistance and insulin regulation. So what do we recommend to do with these patients? Again, control the type of fats that they're intaking, and then work on blood sugar regulation, work on making their insulin levels normal. And that would include proteins, high fiber foods, changing their fats, and increasing their low intensity resistance exercise to help burn fat and decrease or increase insulin sensitivity. No cheese, no dairy. Well, I feel bad even saying no chocolate. ADRB2 and carbohydrate metabolism. So this gene or this risk allele has a receptor that's found on several different genes, and it can actually affect your physiological response to stress. These are located on, like I said, cells throughout the body, but also adipose tissue, and that's the connection right there. This makes a receptor for adipose tissue. So these fat cells, people with this risk allele, their fat cells are actually able to be larger than someone else's. They'll have a higher fat mass, and that is a genetic propensity towards that. So as you all know, you don't change the number of fat cells you have throughout life, you change their size. So, fat cells most people have a fat cell because they can get to this size, and these people have one that can get to an even larger size. And they have an increased insulin levels and likely BMI. So you want to focus on fat metabolism here with these patients. So anything that's going to increase that, like L-carnitine, is a really good supplement for increasing fat metabolism. And then regulating those insulin levels and those insulin spikes. So low carbohydrates. You want to really work on sugar levels with this patient. So it's not, you're going to, they're ones that can handle maybe a low fat diet as long as it's good fats and you're not really like throwing in all the heavy dairy. And then eating 20 to 30 grams of protein with each meal, again, to help with appetite regulation. And then exercise, low to moderate exercise, 60 minutes a day. That benefits this patient the best. So this one, this SH2B1, has a lot to do with leptin resistance and insulin resistance. Those are really important with this phenotype. So leptin tells it's released by it goes to your brain, it tells your brain that you're full. If your leptin receptors are resistant, it's not going to listen to that message. So you may be eating, your body may be saying, hey, I'm full, but your brain's not sensing it. Well, guess what? It works on the same level. Insulin is also, in these people they're resistant to the message of insulin as well. So you have people, this is the picture. You have a person that's hungry all the time, that's craving sugar foods, that has a predisposition to diabetes, to type 2 diabetes. It's this sort of perfect storm. And that's why this is such an important risk allele to test for in your patient, especially if you have a patient with family history of type 2 diabetes. So how to treat that? You really want to focus mostly on balancing their blood sugar levels. Protein to help balance that insulin. You want to have them eating little, more frequent meals so that their insulin levels are always balanced. One of my favorite things to recommend for keeping insulin levels balanced is breaking your fast in the morning with protein. So I always say, if you have eggs that you can do, or like a hard-boiled egg or whatever, have that be your first meal so that your body is like, okay, this is what to expect for the rest of the day. I can eat whatever. I mean, I don't need to have these big spikes. It's so interesting because in our society, we usually break our fast, our breakfast, with a carbohydrate. I mean, who here hasn't heard of somebody having donuts for breakfast? And I think it's because you're so hungry, you crave that sugar, you want that immediate energy because you haven't eaten in 12 hours, so you're naturally more drawn to something like a bowl of cereal. Well, I love it when my patients will break their fast with like some nuts or an egg or any type of protein that is really good, or fat, you know, if they want to have some sausage or something like that. Something that tells their pancreas that you're okay, you don't need to overreact to everything I put in you for the rest of the day. So supporting success. If you're going to support your patient through the weight loss journey, you want all of these components. You want the right food, the right chemistry, the right exercise, the right energy output, and the right weight for that person. So the genetics of weight management here, what patient type is compatible for genetic testing? I think that's a great question because there was a scenario where a patient got their test results back and they said, well, I have all these risk alleles, and does that mean I'm just doomed to be overweight for the rest of my life? And that's not at all what we want our patients to think. We want them to feel empowered by our test results. But some people's personalities are just not compatible with genetic testing. That is just the fact of the matter. No matter what the genetic test is, they're going to see it as a death sentence, and they might not listen to anything you have to say after that. And so having a good idea of your patient's personality before ordering genetic testing is always important. When to order weight loss for genetic testing for your weight loss? Like I said, anytime you have a patient that's having trouble maintaining their weight or struggle losing weight despite treatment. If it's that one patient that's like, oh yeah, I mean, I can't even tell you how many patients I have had. They're like, well, I just gave up soda pop and I lost like 20 pounds. And I'm like, I haven't drank soda pop since 1996. And I can't believe that works for you. But, that's not the person that you would be so worried about for genetics or genetic testing. And how best to use the results to treat the patient is really to tailor their treatment plan specifically to them so that, one, the treatment plan is easier, and two, it's more effective. And what are the only, are these the only alleles involved in weight management? No. These are the ones that we have found right now to have the best research that we feel comfortable reporting on and putting our name on it. So